So we'll get started. My guests today are Representative Randy Udell and Senator Melissa Ratcliff, and we're just gonna wing it. That's what they said they wanted to do. They're here to answer questions. They do have to be at the library at 11 o'clock. So if you don't see enough of them this morning, you can go to the library and they're gonna talk about the state budget. Otherwise, they're here to answer any questions and kind of give you an overview of what their day looks like and what their responsibilities are at the state capitol. So thank you for being here.
Wait, we have responsibilities? Randy, I'll let you go first. Since you're first on the slide, just introduce yourself a little bit.
How kind is that? Randy Udell, and I am your state rep, District 47. Just so, with the fair maps last year, the district looks very different. District 47 encompasses all of Fitchburg, and then you had east, Stoughton, and all of the surrounding towns of Stoughton, up to a portion of McFarland, into the city or the village of McFarland. So that's District 47. As the board says, a number of committees. It's a little difficult to catch up with the senator and the committees, but there is one missing, and I'm on the Governor's Broadband Task Force. But Committee on Financial Institutions, Committee on Forestry, Parks, and Outdoor Recreation, and Committee on Insurance, and as I mentioned, the Governor's Broadband Task Force, which my experience is with AT&T. I was with them for almost 30 years. I understand broadband, and I know the issue isn't as great in Stoughton, but the surrounding towns, rural areas are lacking broadband, and I campaigned on pushing broadband into the rural areas because it's so important to students, to families, and I know the senator can speak to it as well because I kind of follow in her footsteps with she leaving the assembly now in the Senate, but you're still in the broadband, the governor's task force as well. So
That's right.
we can talk further on that, but I'll turn it back the floor over to the senator.
Great, thank you, Randy. And what's not on my list of committees, which if you can't see it, I am on too many. Committee on Administrative Rules, Utilities and Tourism, Review of Administrative Rules, Information Policy and Technology, Audit Committee and Retirement Systems. Also on Technology Caucus, co-chair of, which is new, because I can't say no. And the Governor's Task Force on Broadband Access with Rep. Udell. The Governor appointed me into the Senate role on that committee or task force. And then I think that's it. I think that's enough. So I am in my first term as a senator in District 16, which includes Randy's district in the assembly, and then 2 other assembly districts, District 46 that I am in the village of Cottage Grove, and District 48, right. Then with Rep. Heisel in the Sun Prairie area, mostly, and a little bit of East Madison. So that is all part of District 16. And broadband expansion is really important to me as well. I was on the Dane County Board, as Rep. Udell is also on the Dane County Board now.
I am. I'm still on the board, yes.
Yes, and are you on that task force?
I am, and that's the reason why I'm still on the Dane County Board of Supervisors. That's really where a lot of the dollars are being executed and pushed out, and I want to make certain that continues. And we go a little bit further, that may not continue, but like many other programs, from the federal level, those dollars may be pulled as well. So.
Right, which we hope does not happen.
We hope.
You authored a letter
Yes.
that you sent out to all of the legislators to sign on to about asking the federal government to send us the broadband dollars so that we can expand in our state. It's $1.055 billion that we have been promised,
right,
basically,
right.
that we want to come to our state to expand, which would only get to about half, I think, of the residences that don't currently have access to broadband, to internet. So it's a dire issue throughout our state because it's so much more than recreation with internet. And I think we could talk for a whole hour on broadband, so that's not what this is supposed to be about, certainly, but it's just, if you couldn't tell, it's really important to us.
Well, not to interrupt, but I asked the governor if he would allocate additional dollars, and he did placed it in his budget of another $400 million. Now, we're not quite sure where that will go, but he has made that commitment, so.
Exactly, that's part of the budget.
Yeah, and he's a strong advocate of broadband as well, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So a little bit more about me. I live in the village of Cottage Grove. I was on the village board in Cottage Grove and the Dane County board at the same time from 2018. And just finished my term in 2024 on the Dane County board when I was in the assembly last session. I'm in the Senate. I live at home with my two kids who are 16 and 20. My daughter is 16 and she goes to Monona Grove High School. She's a junior. And I was a paralegal for 24 years at the same firm, downtown Madison, in the personal injury field until I retired from that last April, also to run for Senate and become a full-time legislator.
A little bit more about myself, since you spoke to it. As I mentioned, I am still on the Dane County Board of Supervisors, District 33, which is the entire city of Fitchburg. And I've been in Fitchburg for 27 years with my husband, Brad. And we've been together for 30 years, married for 11 of those years. I gotta make sure I have that correct. You forgive me.
He's not here.
Yeah, he's not here. But anyway, by law, 11 years. And prior to that, I worked for AT&T for close to 30 years, responsible for South Central Wisconsin, their network, Oshkosh, Madison, state and local government, Beloit, Janesville, and Lake Geneva. So it was a large area and responsible for broadband internet. It started with copper, but we're in the fiber world now. So long history in the political world, also treasurer of the Democratic Party of Wisconsin. I think I can say that in this group. So I manage a $68 million budget for the party, and started out my career with Congressman Les Aspin from Janesville. So that's kind of all in summary. So.
Great.
Yeah.
Do you have other slides of us, or are we just?
No, that's it.
Okay, good. Okay,
They're going to answer questions.
Yes.
I can pass this microphone around if somebody has a question.
Please do. Yeah.
I'm just interested in what form of broadband they're proposing, wireless or actual physical connection.
Physical.
I'm on fiber optics, and it's just kind of really amazing to have 300 megabytes per second. It's just instantaneous for everything.
Now, you mentioned fiber, but there is another objective out there. Elon Musk wants to pull those dollars, as we mentioned, but at the same time, he wants to move everything to Starlink, his company. So there are drawbacks. I mean, bandwidth for one thing, upgrades as technology changes, and it's also very costly, the setup and the monthly. I mean, affordability is a big issue as well in our minds. But.
That's not a conflict of interest.
No, not at all, not at all. So it's kind of a wait and see. I've been on the state connections committee meetings, and there are 43 states throughout the country, and it's across the board. It's not just Democrats but Republicans as well. They're all very concerned that those dollars will be pulled. I mean, there's like something like $43 billion, if I'm not mistaken, throughout the entire nation that's been dedicated. So, yeah.
On the theme of things being pulled, since you're on the forestry, parks, and recreation committee,
Yeah.
we just heard the news about opening up lands to logging.
Yeah.
And people obviously pulling, decimating the sport and park staff. So in terms of the state parks, is there any impact on that? I mean, obviously we have some forests in the state. Are those impacted by these cuts in direction?
Well, that's early to say. I certainly hope not. I don't know if I have a clear answer on that yet because it's such preliminary. Things are so unknown on so many different fronts.
Right. I will say that I had a budget listening session in Sun Prairie, I think it was earlier this week. The week's kind of fly by. Yeah, I think it was on Tuesday. There was a representative from Mark Polkan's office there, and she had indicated that they don't know what's happening with these cuts also. Like our Congress people are in the dark at the federal level as well of the chaos happening. So at this point, what we're doing at the state level, because we only have so much pull over what happens at the federal level, we're doing what we can to be prepared if things were to happen that really impact our residents and the values of our state. And so I know that natural resources, our environment is so important to tourism in our state, to our local economies, and just how we all live our lives too here in Wisconsin. So it's certainly something, with you being on the committee for forestry, parks, and outdoor recreation, and I'm on the utilities and tourism committee as ranking member, that's something that we are watching to make sure what happens, we can be prepared for if anything were to happen. If you come and watch our budget listening session later, so currently Wisconsin gets $28 billion from the federal government over the biennium, but we send $69 billion to the federal government. And so when they talk about these cuts, then you start looking at, like, why are we sending so much money there when we're not gonna get anything back then, right? And we're not the only state that's going through this. All 50 states are having this happen as well. So we're all states are gonna have to figure out what's happening in their parts too. So it would be a lot of us banding together, as we know from Attorney Josh Call, going on a lot of these lawsuits, pushing back on what the Trump administration has been doing too. So right now, we're preparing for the worst, but hoping for the best. And I will note too, with the, for spring break for Monona Grove School District was the week of March 31st to April 5th. And I bring that up because my daughter wanted to go to New York, and she didn't want to fly, she wanted to drive. And so I was like, okay, you can only do so much with a 16-year-old, let me tell you. I give in sometimes. And so we drove there and parked and spent 3 full days there. And we went to the Statue of Liberty, which is a national park. And there was an empty park ranger station because so many people had been fired, right, from the federal government. And that was my first, really grasp of, oh, of course they aren't there. It used to be swarming with helpful people. And so these are impacting, the cuts are impacting so many people throughout our state and our nation. But here in Wisconsin, at the state level, in the Capitol, we are looking at how to be prepared. I know that in the Assembly, they brought forward a Frozen Federal Funds Act.
Frozen Federal Funds Act, but where we would cover some of those losses. And I say some of those losses because many of those losses, from a state perspective, we just cannot match.
28 billion.
Right.
I mean,
even what we have now is $4 billion, if we could even do that. So
there's $4.6 billion in surplus, which is a separate pocket from our rainy day fund, which is $1.5 billion. So that does not add. It's about $6 billion, which does not add up to 28 billion. So when there are cuts, the Medicaid cuts, the broadband cuts, forestry, right? It's all part of a problem if we weren't to get those funds.
Okay.
Yes.
So the residual dollars for Wisconsin.
So they can hear you.
Okay. Is it on?
Nope.
I thought I had that.
I have a big mouth.
That's okay.
I can really, my voice.
No, it's not.
Okay, so the residual dollars that have been debated for Wisconsin for the last year or two.
Yeah.
So over $1 billion that they haven't decided where to allocate that. So now, are those some dollars that might be used in some of these places that are going to be cut? And that's question one. And question two is, when the cuts come, then programs or resources will just stop, or do they have to figure out, like, are there some tax implications to the taxpayers? You know, because you don't want everything gone, so then do the taxpayers pay?
Well, I think those are all things that we're going to have to sort through. It's such a new unknown for us as well, but as the senator mentioned, there's just not enough dollars to cover the loss itself. So where do we turn? And there's going to be further conversations with folks such as yourself.
Right. We hope that it does, like, that the cuts don't ever take effect, right? Like, we've seen the threat of it, but it has not happened there yet. So it's
at least with Medicare and Medicaid,
right.
What we're hoping. I mean,
right, and the broadband.
Broadband, that's still, I'm just surprised that one seemed like, yeah, okay.
Right.
So I have kind of a general question. With all of this going on, I find myself in tremendous information overload. And I go back and forth between wanting to stay informed, but not wanting to have a heart attack. So,
I understand that.
like, and some of the issues like the voting regulations that just went through the House, and Social Security, and, you know, there's so much media out there, some of it not correct, some of it correct. And my question is, what would you suggest for staying up to date, but not taking in too much? Like, do you guys have updates on your website? And also, everybody feels pretty helpless because all this is like churning in Washington, but what little things, are there little things that can be done on a local and personal level that can help in some way?
Yeah. Well, I know my website is fairly new. I'm new to this role since January 6th, and we've done a fairly good job with a new website. A great staffer that's been.
Which, if I can just go off on the website at the Capitol, state government in general, like, they do the best that they can, but it's not as easy as just getting a website up and running. There's all sorts of other hoops that our staff have to go through to build a website.
Well, that's where I was going with it.
Yeah.
I've got this one individual who is 22 and seems to have this mastered just a little bit because it is extremely cumbersome for some odd reason. And we all experience this and know. And many colleagues reach out and try to figure this out.
Yes. It's very
You know,
difficult.
hear our roles on a website at the state capitol. But that is a resource. That is a resource.
So
Yeah.
what I do for news, because it could be too overwhelming, especially knowing how impacted the people in our district would be if things at the federal level were to come to pass. We've gotten so many emails from people talking about their personal experiences with Medicaid and how it impacts them and their kids and their family members and how important it is to them. And so, like, knowing if anything is done to Medicaid, how impactful that is to our residents. So what I find works for me is looking at a regular newspaper and going through and being able to decide what news I want to intake, rather than listening to news on the TV, which is just telling me what they want to say.
Do you find newspapers filtering through that easier than?
Exactly. That's how I do. I will say I don't get my news from Facebook if I can help it.
No, yeah.
I don't know, it's not always accurate for some reason, but and we do have e-newsletters every month that has kind of some updates on what's been happening at the state. And in my e-newsletters, I try to have information there on events going on throughout the district too. It's more positive news rather than all the negativity. And I just wanna note too, we have our business cards on the table over there, so you can feel free to take one of those and reach out to us after this, send us an email or call, or write us a letter too, that's always a good way. And we can delve into more specifics if you aren't able to ask a question today, or if you have something else that you'd like to talk to us separately. And we can always set up a meeting too, to talk individually, whether it's in the Capitol or here in Stoughton.
Through the website, you can also sign up for those e-newsletters, so.
I have a follow-up, it's actually it's not the same topic, but it sort of is. So I consider myself an independent voter. I
Sure.
voted both sides of the aisle. So my question is, in Washington, with all this chaos, it appears that the president has mostly support from the Republicans in Washington. There's a few that break from that, but not very many. He has strong support. So on the state level, when it becomes very obvious the harm that these budget reductions will do to people in our state, and our Republicans in Congress have constituents, how do they feel? Do they march behind Washington, or do they actually stand up for the people in Wisconsin?
Are you speaking of our electeds, or are you speaking of
Yes.
constituents that are Republicans? I'm sorry.
No, our elected representative in Wisconsin.
Well, I mean, we could speak of Mark. You were just at a town hall with, it was one of his staffers, but Congressman Buchanan from our district is, I've seen him everywhere. So, I don't know if you want to, maybe you attended an event with him or something.
I have not, but I think what your question is, if I can rephrase it, is basically Republicans at the federal level march along with what Trump says, and does that happen at the state level, basically?
At the state level.
And so, before April 1st, before our last election, our Republican colleagues certainly were doing things that was based on what was happening at the federal level. After the April 1st election, I'm hopeful that hopefully they'll snap out of that. So at our level, it's more that Republicans in the assembly go along with whatever Speaker Boss says.
There you go.
Ultimately.
There's a key there.
In the Senate, it's a little bit different. There are Republicans in the Senate who aren't, they don't always go along with their leadership with Speaker, or my Majority Leader LeMahieu. And so it's a little bit better on the Senate side, but the Assembly side, Speaker Boss has really been detrimental to a lot of legislation. And like one bipartisan bill that is very popular, Speaker Boss has continually been against and prevented its passage, which is Medicaid expansion for postpartum care for women from 2 months to 12 months. And that, we're the last state.
The last state, Arkansas. Arkansas just voted the other evening.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we are the last state now that doesn't support moms ultimately to have care that impacts their families and babies. And that's because Speaker Boss is against it. There's like 60 some.
I've heard as high as 70.
Right,
So,
in the assembly, I know
In the
that
assembly,
so that's Democrats and Republicans all
Yeah.
signed onto this bill. And
Yeah.
I didn't look up the Senate side, but I'm signed onto that bill too. And so it just shows that there are things that we can work together on, and if we can get past Speaker Boss, who tends to make everybody march in the same line, unfortunately.
Right.
But certainly we have good conversations with our Republican colleagues too. We want bipartisanship. I know that our district is not all Democrat, and when you write into our office, like all of you here, it doesn't matter if you're Democrat or Republican or independent, like we represent you. and we want to work on bills and issues that are important to all of you. Oh, there's a celebrity in the house. Rep. Udell's husband, Brad, is here.
I think he's my photographer.
I also just want to note too, Supervisor Engelberger showed up too as well. So if you have questions about the Dane County level, you can ask him. Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to add in about information overload as far as, so a few of the sites that I'll use to look through things online, one would be PolitiFact. So, and then you can get it fact checked in there, and they're pretty well balanced. Another on YouTube, these are also all free ones, are the Midas Network. That one can tend to overload you a little bit.
Oh,
They
no,
put
that's a
lot
good
of
one.
Videos out.
My favorite.
Yeah,
Is it-
but it's really
Is it
well balanced and,
MIDAS?
Yeah.
MIDAS.
yep. And they do a lot of like really deep dives into subjects as well. So you can get in as far into the weeds as you want to with that one. And then a subscribe-based one is Ground News Network. So lots of places that you can get really good information in there and dig in as far as you want.
Thank you for that information.
All right, anybody else have any questions?
Oh.
I got one.
All right,
I-
another celebrity.
I'm gonna change topic and talk about ICE and immigration. Has the federal government been transparent with you in regards to who they plan to target in the state? Or are you just waiting to see what they do?
So they don't reach out to our individual offices at all, and if they, like, I haven't heard anything specific. I don't know that they work with anyone. There was a bill brought forward, by our Republican colleagues about forcing sheriffs to an administrative warrant, to let ICE know when there was someone who was an immigrant, if ICE had an administrative warrant, which is going against the Fourth Amendment of our Constitution, which would not give due process, I think. So I know our Dane County Sheriff was very concerned about that bill coming forward because it would require him to break the law, basically. So that one's still going through the process, and I just wanna note too, that even if a bill passes in the Assembly, it still has to go to the Senate before it can go to Governor Evers and.
I think it's in the Senate now because it went through us already. Yeah.
Exactly, and we're not meeting next week.
Right.
We've only met in the Senate, we've only had 2 sessions, over these past 3.5 months now. Whereas in the Assembly, you guys have met a lot more, but
Well, we have, but that was strictly political.
very much so those
All the bills
bills
that were brought forward were
messaging.
for the Supreme Court race. So, but we saw where that went, so.
But so no, ICE doesn't work with us. I don't think that they always work with local departments either. I think
Yeah.
they just come in, and certainly if I knew that ICE was gonna be at one of the schools in my district, I would be like working against them coming into the school, so that should be a safe place. And it's really scary to me to think of that they're using that safe space to break up families who are just trying to live their lives.
One of the reasons I ask is because farms in Wisconsin are 40% employed by
Yes.
illegal immigrants.
Mhm.
So is that gonna have an impact if they just start raiding local farms
Yeah.
Yeah,
and shutting down businesses?
right. Yeah, no, we're in agreement with you.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, all of you, and thank you for that one. It is a concern, like all these different issues, levels of chaos ultimately, and it's all concerning, and certainly that's why I don't watch the news every day, because of that whole craziness of like what's coming at us today, right? And so what we what we do is just work to try to prevent it. And when we put forward bills, being Democrats in the minority, it's unlikely to go anywhere, but we do that because we are working towards things that can actually help the people in our state, as opposed to just the messaging bills that have been put forward and passed in the assembly that were just to help with that election in April that did not do that.
It is surprising, though, the bills that are brought forward is so much on messaging from the other side. Sometimes, in fact, I've had colleagues point it out, these bills are just so poorly written. And they are, sometimes they're just small one-pagers, but it's the messaging behind it and to get everybody on record. So.
And bills that they know Governor Evers would veto as well.
Sure.
They still bring up and pass bills that he vetoed last session and know that they will be again. So that's really frustrating when there's so much more that we could be doing for all of you, rather than putting forward bills that you know aren't going anywhere and are poorly written and don't actually do what they should, or they have so many negative consequences.
Right.
Like, it's just ridiculous that you would waste your time on that when I know I'm busy with a lot of things representing our district that.
Well, with constituent requests.
Yes, exactly.
That are very valid.
Yes.
For all of you folks, yeah.
On that line of discussion, bills that are messaging, there's one that came up to my attention. It was brought to my attention by the ACLU of Wisconsin. It's AB 88 SB 94, and it's a one-pager, and it's regarding basically the definition of a riot and introducing felony level charges for those that participate. I can't really remember the exact wording of it, but is that something that you identify as messaging? Because I wonder if something like that doesn't have a chance of overriding a governor veto.
Well, go ahead.
I don't know the specific bill, like we'd have to see the language, but when you brought that up, I've heard something about a bill that, maybe it was with ACLU, because I get their magazine, and that it's a way to be against college students protesting and limiting free speech then.
Right.
Which is part of messaging for our Republican colleagues, and also the concern, like you said, is that it slips through and then makes things worse. And like they continually throw darts trying to break through ultimately. And every time a bill comes out, our leadership's offices who have been there longer know about these issues and different bills from the past, and so we then find out, oh, this bill was brought up last session, this is what happened.
They'll flag it for us.
Exactly,
Yeah.
And so that helps us to know, like, oh, this is what's going on with this bill, this is like, why would you put forward a bill like this? So it's on our radar, is basically what I'm letting you know, that we there's lots of checks and balances to make sure that we know what's going on with the bill and why it's a good bill. There are bills that are good that get put forward, like the postpartum Medicaid extension, or if they are just terrible bills and why they're bad. So, and if you want us to look further into that, please email us and we can get you more information.
Please, yeah.
Thanks.
I can touch on a few things that might affect us locally. So yesterday I was at Greenspire, which is subsidized apartment projects in Stoughton. And we had received the $5.8 million to do some solar panels and heat pumps and sustainability efforts for the building and for those residents that are there on fixed income, which it was the first one in the nation using the federal bills money. And they're just wrapping up that project. But the reason those projects are important is not only is it good for the environment, but it's really good for the residents that live there, because their electric bill will be very minimal, if anything at all. In the past, those units were all individually heated by electric floor heaters, which are still there as a backup, and now they're being heated by the heat pumps, which are driven by solar panels. So those are the types of projects that have been cut at the federal level. We were able to get that one in under the wire, so we're pleased about that. On our city buildings, we're just wrapping up a project at the fire station to put solar panels on there. And really what that does is it allows us to reduce our electric bills for the city. Under the state spending limits, we're limited on how much we can raise property taxes. So one of the things we try to do is reduce our expenses, and putting solar panels on the buildings using federal tax credits is one way to do that. We're hoping, but we're not 100% certain, that we're going to receive this $68,000 tax cut we were promised when we started that project. This building here is slated to be done next. We're getting estimates right now to replace the roof and put solar panels on this building as well. And our plan was to do all the municipal buildings that made sense. We typically look to get at least a 12-year or less payback on those investments. And with the tax credits, many of them became like 8 years to get our money back. And the lifespan of the solar panels could be 20, 30 years. So it saves the taxpayers a lot of money going forward, plus it helps the environment. So we're thinking on this building and the future buildings, probably slim chance that we're gonna receive those tax credits. But those were some of the, things that were, cut at the federal level that are gonna impact us here in Stoughton.
If I can just note that in the budget, Governor Evers has, I think it's 50 million in a green innovation fund that you would then be able to hopefully apply for grant funding for programs such as the solar on the roof.
Yeah, so that'll be something that we'll definitely be looking into. So thank you for sharing that. Hopefully that goes through. I was in Whitewater last night. We were talking about state budget a little bit and the impacts on the decisions. And there's a lot of good in the state budget already that I think there will be some bipartisan agreement on some things that carry over from the previous budget to encourage more housing options and incentives or revolving loan programs through WIDA for either downtown buildings or new development or even some remodeling of some existing. So I felt there was some bipartisan support on that bill. We have lobbyists that we work with to help, encourage the legislators to support those bills. So I think there's an opportunity there to get some things done. There's other issues that we just know that, we're just throwing stuff against the wall and it's not gonna stick or whatever. And it's frustrating for me to hear the stories about the messaging bills because that's really not productive use of anybody's time. And it's really unfortunate. And I'm sure that, the other side of the aisle probably feels that there's some coming from your side of the aisle as well. But it seems like we've been flooded the last several years, by one particular side of the aisle, and that's unfortunate. But, what we've seen though in our races is that it really hasn't resonated with voters. So that's encouraging to me that, we have two people here that are really serving for the right reasons, and that's to give back to the communities, to try to make the world a better place, to provide services for our constituents, and they're not doing it solely for political reasons, although once you get in there, you have to be able to, to fight for what you think is right, and we appreciate that as well. So, we're blessed here in the city of Stoughton at the county level as well. Last month, County Executive Agar was here, and you heard from her, and, you see our local school board and city council and county board members really, advocating for what's best for Stoughton. So I think, there's some encouraging signs going on here, at least in our community. So we control what we can. We have great working relationships. As far as trying to communicate, I was in Washington, D.C. in February, and, we talked to Pocan, Baldwin, and Johnson, and they were all pretty much on the same page. We're talking about utilities issues, and it was really interesting talking to Senator Johnson about the tariffs because he is not a supporter of the tariffs. But it'll be interesting to see what happens, when push comes to shove on those issues, where he stands and whether or not he has a voice. We hope that he does. If he doesn't, we'll certainly remind him of what he told us while we were there. So my question for you two is, really, what is the best way for individuals or other elected officials to get their message to you or others that are kind of in the political arena?
Well, I think for me, and I've had lengthy conversations with my staff, and there's been some question from other constituents, does the emails work? Do the phone calls work? And in my office, they do. I look at them, my staff looks at them, brings them to me, and I think it's important. And I think it's important in every office to continue to send your message to whoever you're working with. I think there's been some frustration, at least in one of the listening sessions that I listened earlier this week, that do representatives actually look at those emails, and do they have an impact? And because they were working with representatives from the other side of the aisle, and I said, well, I would just continue. I mean, it's effective on my side. So, I mean, that's one strategy from you folks. And I'm sure the senator has maybe some other thoughts.
I would say any way that you contact me, you get a response back too. So if there's something that you're advocating for that's really important to you, it's helpful for us to know, because then we can advocate for that at the state level. Like Knowles Nelson Stewardship Program is one of the main issues that I've gotten so many emails and postcards on, all wanting it to continue that program. And which is good, because I support it too. It's so good for all the community.
The other side of the aisle.
Right, yes. Especially. So we will respond to you as well. In my office, we respond. I'm sure in yours as well. Because I know that you're taking time out of your day to call or email or write a letter on something that's important to you that you're taking time on. And I certainly read those and then respond so that you know that I received it too. And my staff is great. I have 3 staff as a freshman senator, because my district is 3 times as large as Rep. Udell's. I think is the theory behind it. I don't know. I don't get paid 3 times as much as you.
That's not what I
We get paid the same, so which is fine.
I only get 1 staffer, but I do get options of interns. So.
Yes.
And they do a great job.
But it does matter. Even if you think that we'll vote or we think the same way as you, it's great to hear that from our district. And if we don't agree on something, it's good to hear from you too. Even if it's like wakeboarding. Wakeboarding is an issue that some people have brought up that I didn't know anything about. So it was really helpful to get that information, because then I know that that's something that's important to the district. So any type of contact is really helpful for us, email, phone, mail, and if you want to have a meeting, certainly email or call and we'll set something up too. We are available, and that's why we're here today too.
On that note, as far as meetings, I really enjoy when constituents walk in and we can have that conversation, but please keep in mind, it's probably best to set up a time.
Yes.
Because we're in half-hour increments, and sometimes we just can't greet everybody that's at the door. So, but call and we'll set up a schedule.
All right, are there any final questions? Because I know you have to be at the library at 11. We have one more from the back, and then we'll see if we can wrap it up.
Peanut gallery.
In regards to revenues, Wisconsin is largely property tax is used to raise taxes. And I've seen, other states do other means like sales tax. And we're seeing more wheel tax and other, like I think Fitchburg just did a wheel tax. So do you know of other communities exploring other ways to raise revenue like that? Like I'm sure it's a sales tax, and what is the level? Can the town do that, or is that be a county or a district or?
Right now, the state dictates what can be done, and the state says municipalities, counties cannot raise or can't do sales tax. In the state budget, there is, Governor Evers has proposed that the special education aid funding be increased to 60%, which is currently around 30%, just because of how the dollars are allocated. And ultimately, that would help all of our school districts where they would not have needed to go to referendum at all,
Right.
which we have all been voting for increasing our own property taxes to fund our schools, while we at the state are sitting on $4 billion, that's your money. And so we have not given the tools to our local municipalities, schools, or counties to be able to provide the services to residents that they need. And that is something that I think is also in Governor Everett's budget, if I remember correctly, about allowing municipalities to do sales tax. But I can't remember specifically if it was in the budget or if I had seen
Yeah,
it.
it's in the budget. It had to be a population of 30,000 or more, which was
Right.
about, Fitchburg's right on the edge, about 70 municipalities. So that wouldn't help Stoughton. And,
Yeah.
my position is we should be able to control things locally. And if we wanted to do a city sales tax, especially for the tourism part, and, the example I use is the Opera House. We basically send $50,000 a year to the state through the ticket sales tax, for something that we operate, we provide staffing and a building and services for. And then probably another $50,000 for economic development for the people that come to Stoughton and eat and drink and go to the shows. All that money goes to the state, and we invest about $200,000 of our budget for the operation of the Opera House without really, we can't make it break even. We only have 3 full-time people there, and we can't just make it on ticket sales alone. So we would like to have the opportunity to have a city sales tax here to catch additional dollars from tourism as they come here, or whether it's the Opera House or Setting Mai or any other activity that's going on here. And, I think that's one of the ways that it could be funded. So I'm encouraged that the governor at least put something in the budget. But I think we really need to look at the population, because most municipalities that have 30,000 people or more already have full-time city administrators. They might have an economic development person. The mayor may have deputy mayors. They may have sustainability coordinators and DEI coordinators and engineers and a full-time paid fire and EMS. We don't have any of that here in Stoughton. So my argument on that one would be is we need to focus on the smaller communities, not the bigger ones like Madison and Milwaukee. They already have all the staffing they should need based on what they're doing. In the smaller communities right now, that's where the growth is starting to occur, is in the suburbs, Stoughton, Fitchburg, Cottage Grove, Dane County in general. So I think it's encouraging that we at least are beginning to have that conversation.
Well, you and I have had this conversation, but, this is my first time first time with this particular budget, or since I'm a new representative. But the question I have to you is, why is there a 30,000? Do you have any idea why there's?
I don't know how the governor came up with that number, other than, probably the bigger communities, lobbied harder for it. I don't know where that number came from, but like I said, it's only 7
Well, I can go back and
municipalities.
ask, yeah.
But that is a good question. I don't know the answer.
I wonder if it's not because of in the shared revenue bill passed last session that there was something, because I know Madison, Milwaukee really did not benefit from the shared revenue, and so I wonder if that might be why the 30,000.
Yeah, and I know Janesville and Eau Claire and some of the larger communities kind of grumbled about the percentage of the increase that they received. But I would argue they already have a lot of overhead, and, they were locked in with the spending limits back in the day because they weren't as frugal as communities like Stoughton or even like the school district, and that's why you're seeing a lot of the school districts go to referendum as well. So I think we all agree that we rely too much on property tax, so I think that's a good question, and it'll be interesting to see where we go. I know you two have to take off, so I appreciate you being here. And they're going to continue the conversation at the library if you want to talk about the state budget. I'll wrap through some slides, maybe in about 15 minutes. You're going to be there till how long?
It's about an hour. I'll be
So
there.
you'll be there till noon?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
And please reach out to to us if there's other things at all. Our business cards are over there, and we'll leave those with you then.
Sounds good, thank you, Matt.
Thanks. But now I'm sad I don't get to see your presentation.
Well, I can email it to you. All right, we're gonna talk about, the second season of the year, which is road construction. So right now, you might realize that we have construction on the east side of town, and this is a state project through the Department of Transportation. And you can see coming from the interstate by Coachman's, which is over here, these are local detours. Pleasant Hill up toward, 51, down Pleasant Hill and up through this way is the way we really want to get traffic through town. If you're going over on the north side of town, you can go up on Pleasant Hill and go all the way up to B and come over. When the DOT sets up the detours, they have to use state highways as their official detours. So this map was put together basically in collaboration with business owners, the city, but it's officially being distributed through the Chamber of Commerce. We get the question, well, why is the detour taking us so far? Well, that's because the DOT has to use state highways. They can't use county highways. I don't know the history of that. We certainly don't want semis going on township roads where the roads aren't built for it and they have weight limits on it. So they're doing the first phase from Spring Road, basically coming in to town. It's going to be done in 3 phases. And this is kind of the timeline. So right now they're working on the orange phase right here. And then eventually they'll get to this blue section and then they'll finish off over kind of near the fire station. And weather permitting, those are the dates that they're shooting for. It's always based on the weather, and so far it's been good. And then there's just more detailed maps. If you need a map, let me know. I can email you a map, or you can go on the Chamber's website. The maps are listed on there as well. At the last coffee, there was a question about traffic at Moline Street. So what we do is our little traffic devices that have the little digital numbers on there. When you drive by, it tells you how fast you go. So the police department set that up down there, and we can run reports, and the reports by hour will show you how many cars, basically the speed range that they went through, and we can print that out, and then we can do traffic enforcement or other things. Now, we know that usually when the sign's up, 2 things happen. People slow down because they see the sign, and once in a while, somebody will see how fast they can go and make the sign go up, right? So in this particular one, you can see that there was 546 cars during this period, 308, I can't even read the number, I think it's 388, went within 21 to 25 miles per hour, 79 were below, 70 were 26 to 30, and we had one car going 46 to 50 miles an hour. So for the most part, people were going right at the speed limit or slightly more or slightly under. So it's really interesting to get the data because it always seems, especially in front of your own house, that everybody's speeding, right? Especially the trucks because they're loud. But this is one of the things we can do. So if you're having what you think are issues in your neighborhood, we're more than happy to bring the speed trailer around and we can monitor it and see what kind of data we get. We also, as part of the construction, after leaving the meeting last month, I started thinking about the road construction and the detour and discovered that it goes right by Keegan's school. So there was a plan, they put in a 4-way intersection. In the first few days of school, we had a police officer in the morning during drop-off to make sure everybody knew, that they were supposed to stop because now there's a 4-way stop there and that everything was going orderly. And we did get an email from the school district thanking us for doing that. So the feedback that we get in this room is really helpful when we're talking to, the school district and our departments to, make hopefully meaningful and safe changes in our community. There's just some more data there, but you can see, get all sorts of information using the technology, and we're doing more and more of that in our community, not only on traffic counts, but really on everything in general. We're starting to even use features when we do our virtual meetings. We get these AI things with the chat. What do they call it? Chat GP. Yeah, things like that, which help summarize our meetings. We always read them because not all AI is true, just like not all things you see on Facebook are true. But certainly it helps streamline the process to summarize some of the things that we're doing. Somebody earlier asked me about Man Park. They're working on it right now. You might recall that last year we did the first phase, which was mainly the new road here, and then most of the inside area. And the part that they're starting to work on now is the additional parking that'll be here, and then there'll be parking in the turnaround here. And then finally, the road that's here, which is in really bad shape, will be replaced with a trail. And we've worked, really closely with the Fair Board and, put this plan together. And this is scheduled to be completed after the fair is over. So they're going to do as much as they can while the weather holds up without getting overly committed and disrupting the fair. And then whatever's left over, they'll do after the July 4th weekend. And in the meantime, we work with the Man Center and the Fair Board because they have other activities down there other than just the fair. And so far, we've gotten really good response. By moving the grandstand, we have a much more orderly way to get through the parking lot. We've been able to add parking spaces here, and then eventually when we get these here, we're probably gonna gain, I don't know, at least 80 parking spots in the parking lot. We won't be allowing parking on this road anymore. If you were down there for the Business Expo, we did allow it for that event, but you can see how crowded it gets down there, especially during the fair. So what they'll do during the fair is they'll probably put a barricade or something to allow people to get into Troll Beach, but then the only people that need to go beyond that will be the people that are actually unloading the animals and setting up the exposition area for the fair. Otherwise, everybody else should be able to park, on the road or in the parking lot when this is completed. So we're excited about that. It's a pretty big investment, but we really haven't spent any money on Man Park for years. It was way overdue. We're working on putting up new lighting right now and some of the other features to get it ready for the fair in July. And this is just kind of another map of what it'll look like when it's completed. You might also notice that the current entrance road is up here, and we moved it down here to align with Riverside. So everything aligns better as well. So we think it's going to be more efficient, more orderly, and ultimately we can have some bigger events out there. By turning the grandstand, it was like this, and by turning it like this, we gained a big corner of green space here, and that was one of the main things that we heard from the fair. And I know they're doing a monster truck this year, so that'll be a new event. And hopefully that the new alignment will help them facilitate other types of events going forward. There was also questions about the water park, which I can get to in a little while. I wanted to highlight the music appreciation series is going on right now. John Boydell is the one that coordinates that, and we appreciate all the efforts that you do, John. John's in the room. If you have any requests for music, talk to John, he's the guy. But it's a great series, good variety of entertainment, UW, local, other communities, so it's really a good program. Gazebo music, I saw Bill in the room, I think he's still, are you still participating in that?
Oh yeah, okay.
Bill's the MC, and there's the list of activities, so we start next month already, so we're really excited about that. There again, they have a nice variety. You can see they have jazz, they have some country, some rock and roll, some blues, a little bit of everything there. So I'm really excited for the lineup this year, and hopefully every day will be sunny like this.
Tim, just to mention, if you go back to the 19th of June in Gazebo Music will be the fundraiser for the Senior Center. So if you want to put that on your calendars, that would be great. Kim
Yeah.
will be making some food.
And they're an awesome band. They were there last year.
Yeah.
They were really good.
Back by popular demand.
Yeah.
We're still finalizing the food, and it does go into Labor Day, so there's a few dates after the August 14th thing.
And I forgot to mention that the music series that John helps put on is also sponsored by the Senior Center.
Some grants that we write that John helps us with, so
Yeah.
we're very fortunate. Actually, John's group is almost self-sufficient. He gets some really nice donations per event, so people are very satisfied with the music appreciation series.
Yeah, and I was really hoping to see John perform at some point. I don't know if I've ever seen you play.
Oh, every once in a while we get John.
Well, you have to let me know when.
Okay.
Not to put you on the spot. So yeah, that's going on as well. New businesses, there's a new chiropractic clinic down on Water Street that opened up, I don't know, a month or two ago. So we're excited for that. That building's been empty for quite a while now, so it's always great to see downtown buildings being filled. Wishapan Boutique, they were up in the Lotus Salon, or it was a Salon X, I should say. They were up in the salon there, and they've moved downtown. So they filled up a empty space. And then, I think I had some other slides in here. So, earlier I had a question about the river and what's going on down there and at Man Park. Man Park I covered, but I'm certainly willing to go back to it. So where we're at Man Park is, over the past several years, we've done a few things here. We've we put in the bridge to go across there. That was paid for through some grant monies from the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, which is state funded. And we've done some trail work that we want to continue. We had installed this deflector here, which is basically the rock structure that come out in the river. And then currently we have applications in for another deflector here, and this structure here, which the DNR is calling a small dam. And I think maybe this area up here. So we have some permits submitted to the DNR, and we think those applications are going to be deemed complete any day now. One of the things they wanted us to do was to do some soil samples in the river. When our engineers were in there looking at doing some work on these features, they did run across some contamination. So we're trying to understand if that contamination came from the same type of contamination we found previously upstream, which is what was deemed as legacy contamination from back in the day where Udell is, but the contamination was likely caused by when we built wagons on that site. There was a foundry there, or if the contamination, some of it may be coming from across the river where Public Works used to be. There used to be an energy building there that had a coal gasification plant. So we're trying to understand the source of the contamination and whether or not we need to do anything with it. Like I said, it's in the river, so they were in there last week and they were drilling the samples. And once we get the results from the samples, we anticipate the DNR will be setting up a public hearing for these downstream permits. And at that public hearing, we'll talk about what we want to do. They've already approved the permit for the trail that will go underneath the bridge, but that permit is contingent on getting these other features approved and started. So that all kind of works together. Once we get through that, then we'll probably have a deeper discussion about the future of the dam itself. We do have a proposal that the DNR says it's a reconstruction. And we've learned in the last few months that the powerhouse that is down there is also considered to be part of the dam. And we had some work done at the powerhouse. I'll have a picture of that in here I go. The powerhouse had asbestos in it, so we removed all the asbestos, cleaned out the inside. And then we had a structural engineer down there. They did a presentation at city council a couple weeks ago. And basically they found that the roof needs to be replaced. It's probably been leaking for years, which is causing some other damage in one of the walls. And the initial estimate to protect the structural integrity of the building is $770,000. So we're looking at options short term, so the water doesn't continue to drain down and cause further deterioration in the wall. And then we're also having conversations with Yahara Bay Distillery. They're looking at purchasing the Stoughton Utilities building. They've shown interest in the powerhouse. We're hoping that they'll still acquire it because as a private developer, they can take advantage of things that the city can't to pay for the repairs. The only way we can pay for the repairs is to borrow for it, which ultimately goes on your taxes. We certainly try to avoid that whenever we can. So what they could do is potentially they could use historical preservation dollars. For sure the state dollars, the federal ones, I'm not really sure what the status of that will be, but typically it's up to about 40% for these credits. For the work they would do on the building, they'd get a tax incentive to do that. Plus the other thing they could do is the powerhouse is on the site of the redevelopment authority, so they could use tax incremental financing to offset some of the costs of that building. So we're hoping that they're still interested in the building. I'm supposed to be having a phone call sometime this afternoon with the distillery. I've sent them all the information so they understand what's going on there. And hopefully they'll still want to move forward with that and we can basically, negotiate, the transfer of that building as well as Stoughton Utilities. Stoughton Utilities building, the reason we're looking at selling that building, there's several reasons. One reason is that we've learned that that building is fully depreciated, and by state law and Public Service Commission rules, the city can only charge them rent based on the building and not based on fair market value. Fair market value on that building for rent would be like $207,000 a year. By the state law, we can only charge them $20,000 a year in rent. And it's because they do all the maintenance to the building, so we don't use taxpayers' dollars to do any repairs on the buildings. Although, so the repairs are paid for by the ratepayers, which are city taxpayers, and then some of the township taxpayers that pay in for Stoughton Utilities for their services. So there's really no financial incentive for the city to own the building. Utilities had already expressed a desire to have a more modern, efficient building. They have vehicles and equipment stored at a couple different buildings. Getting everything under one roof would create efficiencies for them. So they're looking at options. They're hiring a consultant to help them do a feasibility analysis of what a potential new building might look like and where it might be located. And then for the distillery, what we'd be doing is we'd be taking a building right now that's on the river, which is valuable. It's currently tax exempt because it's owned by the city. We don't pay property taxes. We'd be selling it to a private business who would be paying property taxes on the building. The building's estimated value is about $2.8 million. The building is also across the street from the tax incremental financing district, so if we expand the district, include that building in there and capture that property taxes, that'll financially help that district there, which has been in the red for years, since day one. So financially, it makes a lot of sense for us to move forward with selling both of those buildings, having it developed and having another attraction for people to come to Stoughton. Hopefully by then we'll have a city sales tax and then we can have additional revenue to keep our property taxes down. So there's a lot of moving pieces there. I don't really have a timetable. I'm hoping to find out more this afternoon. The distillery has come to the city council a couple times, and I'm hoping that they'll be back maybe late May or in June to give us an updated timeline. And we want to fully understand basically how much they're gonna invest in the building, what the new value of the building will be, and what their timeline is for phasing in. They wanna start in the back of the utilities building, which is mostly storage and garages for their large trucks. They would rent back to Stoughton Utilities and to the EMS for a number of years. That would be negotiated. And then the food pantry, they have indicated could be there indefinitely as their way to give back to the community. So the folks that own the distillery right now, they're basically third generation Stoughtonites, hoping to someday be fourth. So we're excited about the opportunity that they might bring to Stoughton. So that's going on. So a lot going on down in that area of town. When we start talking about the dam, one of the things we do is based on the engineering, we update the flow rates. So our normal flow is about 380 cubic feet per second of water going through the dam. And under the proposal, we have two different charts. One is for the fall and winter, and the other one, or this one's the fall and winter, and this one is kind of the spring to the fall. This is the one that is more noticeable because in the winter, they lower the water level anyway for the Madison Lakes, plus there's ice on it. So at this time of the year, under normal circumstances, under the reconstruction of the dam, the water level down there would go down about 2 feet. And to get upstream, all the way up to Highway B, it would be 0.3 or 3 to 4 inches is what the water level would go down upstream. Obviously, under drought conditions, the water level would go down more, almost 3 feet at the dam. If we had high rains, it would only drop just over a foot. One of the features they're talking about putting in is what they're calling a pneumatic gate, and that would be installed so under drought conditions, it would help minimize the water level effect. And, you know, several reasons why we want to do this. Environmentally, really the best thing we can do for the environmental and the health of the river is just to take the dam out and do nothing. If we do that, the water level would drop substantially more than what we're proposing. So what we're doing is what we consider kind of a compromise between taking the dam out and leaving it the way it is. And it provides other benefits. By doing the reconstruction, fish that are below the dam right now currently cannot get upstream. Under the proposal, they'd be able to do that. We'd be able to put the trail underneath the bridge. We would have more fish ladders that would be included as part of the features I showed you. And then one of the things we're trying to better understand is the impact on the wildlife. We've been told by the experts it'll change maybe. If it does, it'll be slightly, and you might have one species versus another, but overall you won't really have more or less. So we're trying to better understand that. And then, of course, potentially the recreational use is one of the other reasons to do the project. So ultimately, that decision will be made by the DNR. We'll submit our application, their permits, they'll go through the process, and they'll either say yes or no. There certainly will be a public hearing on that aspect of the project as well. And I'm sure there's going to be people that are for and against it, but we'll see what happens. We have to get to that point first. So that's kind of an update on that. Any questions? Yes, sir.
What's the status of that whitewater rafting park?
So that would be part of this project. So right now, as I mentioned, we're working on the downstream. And then once we get those applications, or at least conditionally approved, then we would work on the dam itself, and that's where the potential surf wave would go in, and these little ponds. So then what you would do is, as you came down the river, the mill pond would be, the river will be lowered to do the work. The mill pond will mostly dry up, and then we'll seal it. So we'll be putting in dirt and then some native vegetation. So then as the river comes down, you would go through the channels here, through these pools. So if you wanted to kayak or raft, you would come through the pools and then come down through this way. And then if you wanted to surf, the surf wave would be approximately where the current dam is. And then you could come down through that. And then the bladder, like I said, would be the adjustment if the water level was low to help hold back additional water. It won't be a total free flow like it will be taking the river out, because the rock structures that we put in help to impede the water. So that's why they consider all those structures a dam, because the water is not just flowing through. But certainly we won't have the same adjustability as we currently have with the dam. The dam right now really doesn't serve any purpose as far as operating anything. Back in the day, it was installed to operate the sawmill, and it doesn't control really anything under a high water mark because it's wide open. During the low water mark, we can pool some of the water, and that's the additional feature they're talking about putting in to help with that. But really, the flow is really controlled by what's coming out of the Madison Lakes and how much precipitation we get. So the engineers do all the modeling on their computer systems. And then as we get further along in the final engineering, I would imagine they will tweak the numbers on the chart. No question?
Yes, is there a portion where you pay to go through like the water park, and then there's a portion where just anybody who wants to canoe can go down the river and not pay?
We wouldn't be able to charge anybody to use the river itself.
Okay.
You know, that's a public waterway, is my understanding. Now, if we were to get, or somebody else were to get into the rental business of kayaks or surfboards or whatever, there could be a revenue source there. But as far as charging people to use the river, we can't allow it. It's owned by the public.
So there's not a company that's putting in this kind of whitewater rafting thing?
No, there would be a company that would install the features.
Uh-huh.
And then if we put in the adjustable part, that would be controlled by the city through DNR orders with county assistance. Just like the dam right now is when we get a rain or it's a drought, they get a tax, they go down and they manually adjust the gate. I think the county does some electronic adjustments in some of the other dams, but there wouldn't be a company that would come in unless they were a company that were doing like canoe and kayak rentals, but they'd have to be licensed to do that.
Okay.
Oh.
Thank
you. Any other questions on that? So that's mostly what we have today. We'll be, working on the budget here, probably starting in July. We're interested to see what's going to happen at the state level. If you want to learn more about the state budget, Randy and Melissa will be down at the library until noon. Otherwise, we appreciate you being here, and I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions you might have.